Well, here we are. The most exciting part of doing this podcast is we're actually going to get down into some tools. My name is Ray, and I'm your AI Automation Alchemist here at the AI Automation Alchemist podcast. And today I'm going to go over ChatGPT finally. As you have probably heard, if you've listened to the previous episodes, I was under the weather, therefore couldn't do this specific recording, not because I didn't have the energy or the fortitude to do it, simply because I didn't want you guys to see me blowing snot out my nose and coughing up phlegm because I was sick. I was pretty dang sick. You're catching me here at my humble abode. Pardon the mess behind. This is a room that used to be my daughter's room that has now been converted into a storage room for some of the arts and crafts that we do here at the house. And what I mean by arts and crafts is my wife loves to decorate the home. She decorates for every season. So this is where she stores her stuff. And so first of all, I just want to say thank you for arriving at the podcast. And today I'm excited because we're going to be going over a tool that I use very religiously. But before I go into that, let's talk about what's happening on the news when it comes to large language models, especially ChatGPT. OpenAI has released another model, another update. And on top of that, they're fighting with Anthropic, which is the creator of Claude, and they're creating another update. And so every day there's a new update that is being released, being obviously over sarcastic. The reality is it's like weeks or months or whatever. But the problem is that every new model comes out or every new tool, now there's agentic tools, all those things, they're all being released on a week by week basis, maybe month by month. And it creates a firestorm of what are we going to do? What AI tool do we use? What do we do with AI? But the reality is it's how you use these tools, just like any other tool out there. It's how you use these tools for what you're trying to accomplish. And that's why today I want to show you ChatGPT and how I use that tool and how I make that tool work for my business. And hopefully you will understand the concepts of how I use it. If you already know it, if you already know how to use the tool, there may be something I'm showing you that you haven't seen before. But I'm coming at this from a perspective of engineer. I'm an engineer. I'm a software engineer. Been a software engineer for over 25 years. I've developed hundreds of applications for back office, front office, mobile apps, systems, embedded systems, hardware-based software. So I've touched almost every possible facet of software that has to be built. I've even built our own models, like not for my company, but for clients of ours, my company, Grata Software. We've built models for people. So we've been down this road 100 times over, and we've seen the cycle of the industry over the last 25, 26 years. The cyclical nature of new technology that comes out, people get excited, they hype it up, it does certain things, and then people start to realize it can't do everything. So then the engineers come back in and make it more complex because they add more features and functionalities to make people happier about using the tool. And then it gets too complex, and then someone comes out with another tool that is simple, and it becomes the next hype, and it's so on and so forth. And this happens over and over again. And it's kind of what's happening right now with artificial intelligence. It's happening right now with the chatbots. It's happening right now with the agents. The agents is the new hype, right? The agents is the new hype. I can give instructions to a bot or a system. I hit go, I walk away. 24 hours a day, supposedly it's working for me, doing all the things that it should do like an employee would do. So right now it's a hype. And in about 6 months, you're going to have people complaining that it doesn't do enough. And then someone's going to come in and start building other integrations for it or wrap it in other functionality so that it can do the things that people are complaining that it's not doing. And then again, now it becomes more complex, and now you need technology experts to come in and do stuff. So this is a constant cycle. I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's happening right now as we're speaking. But I want you to know that what I'm going to show you here, this is going to be absolutely usable to you. You're going to be able to take this information. You're going to be able to run your business. You're going to be able to use it for what it's worth. And like I said, there's so many other tools I'm going to go over for the remainder of these episodes. So just bear with me and just be calm. Don't worry about the hype cycles. It comes and goes. The reality is just use the stuff the right way. So, all right, let's go over ChatGPT. Let's get started.
The most real and relevant resource on AI and automation. AI Automation Alchemist Podcast. Sponsored by Grata Software.
All right, here we are, ChatGPT. I'm going to go over it with you. To be honest, I use it a certain way, and I only use certain aspects of ChatGPT. I'm not all the way into every single thing that's on there because there's always constant updates. but I'm going to walk through it with you. We're going to walk through it together. And if there's anything new that I haven't seen before, I assure you, being someone who's built software before, I can understand pretty quickly what it's for. And if not, we can just test it right here live as we're doing this, or as you're listening to the podcast. So first things first, I want to go over the differences between the different products, the ChatGPT products. So you have a free version, and most people tend to use the free version. Absolutely fine. But the problem is the free version only gets you so far. You do use up your tokens a lot quicker. You basically get hit with you don't have access to this feature, that feature. So you will get some limitations. I'm not a salesperson for ChatGPT, so I can't tell you what those limitations are. All I know is that I have to do at least the $20 a month plan, which is the plus plan. I have to do that in order to be able to get the results that I'm looking for, because I don't want any limitations for what I need. And so I use the plus plan when I'm working with ChatGPT. Now, there's a pro, there's like a $200 plan, and some of those plans, I don't know what they're for. I don't know what makes them so special at $200, but the reality is, like, I don't need the $200. I could do $20. I could just do everything I need to do. Mind you, there's the chat interface that you're seeing on your screen if you're watching. If you're listening, just imagine you're in chatgpt.com and you have the interface that has the chat on there. Now that chat, that is one area of OpenAI's ChatGPT. This is the one that most people talk about. It's the interface where you go in there and you can talk and chat with it. I have access to the OpenAI's API. So API is an application programmable interface. The thing with an API is it allows programmers like myself, architects, designers that are building software, it allows us to wrap our own technology around the engine that runs the models for ChatGPT. That way we can create our own interfaces that does our own functionality, and we can control input and output and everything. So for your sake, when you're starting off and what I'm going to show you today, we're just looking at the chat bot itself, the interface to be able to chat to it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to where my name is. It's on the bottom left. If you're listening, I'm going to basically describe everything to you. If you're watching, you're going to see it as I do it. So I'm going to go to the bottom left where it says my name, and that is where my account is, and I'm going to click on that. You'll have the option to upgrade your plan, personalization, where you can add some personalization to your chat, settings, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go to personalization, and in here you'll see that it says, it's when I click on it, it opens up a pop-up window, and a pop-up window says, okay, the first option is base style and tone. So you can set what your style and tone is that you want ChatGPT to communicate to you in. So the options are professional, friendly, candid, quirky, efficient, nerdy, cynical. I will always select candid because I'm that type of person. I just like straight up, okay? Characteristics, choose additional customizations on top of that. So it could be warm, enthusiastic, headers and lists, which is basically like my life is headers and lists, and then emoji. I'm going to select header and lists. I'm going to say more header and lists. Enthusiastic, I don't really care. I'm going to go default, emoji, default. Okay. Custom instructions, additional behavior, styles, tones. Now you can build yourself. There's ways that you can build yourself your tone description or your tone parameter. And when you do that, you can copy and paste that in here, and it will obviously make the appropriate responses based on that. Okay, about you. So you have your nickname. What should ChatGPT call you? I don't really care. That's not something I really, again, I use this as a tool. I don't use this as a friend or companion. I just need to get the work done that I need to get done. Okay, occupation. What is your occupation? Now that could be useful for context. If you're asking it to do, if you're asking for certain things, it might use that in context. It says more about you, interests, values, all of that kind of stuff. It's up to you whether you want to put that. I don't really care to put that, but it's up to you. Memory. Okay, this is important. And there are some people that teach ChatGPT, and they tell you that what you want to do is you want to turn on all your reference save memories, right? Or reference record history, all these kind of things. There's a problem with that. And let me explain what that is. My company, we're dealing with different industries. We're dealing with different client types. If I was to set this memory on for both memory and record memory, if I set that on, That means every previous chat I've had or every previous recording that I've made here inside of ChatGPT when I'm using the audio chat, it will use those reference points in the model itself, in the response itself, not the model specifically, but in the response itself. And you don't want to do that if you have different categories of business types, customers. If you're using this to do your marketing, and let's say you're marketing to 3 different types of customer avatars, you don't want it to remember that you had created a whole marketing material for one avatar about 3 chats ago. You don't want it to bring that information into the conversation. That's my personal opinion. Some people will say, yes, you want to bring all that in because it references everything you've done in the past. I tend to be very definitive about what I want the AI to do for me. I don't want it to grab everything. I want it to grab very specific things that I'm asking for. So I turn these off by default. Then you have the advanced. These are like your default selections, like web search, code, canvas, ChatGPT voice, advanced. I leave all those on. So that's fine for me. So that was personalization. Now you have in the same pop-up, you have things like apps where you can connect to different apps, schedules, schedule to run. So scheduling is like a cron job. There's a thing called cron jobs that we write in software where when we want tasks to be done without us having to physically click a button or create a trigger, a manual trigger, we'll use these things called cron jobs. They're basically schedulers where you can schedule it to do certain things at certain times. This scheduler, to be honest with you, I would never have used it. So, yep, definitely not on the list of things to do. Orders. I'm assuming this has to do with OpenAI now selling ads and trying to sell products on their platform. Again, this is a tool for me to use for my business. I don't use it as a commercial user to buy things or whatever. And I'm hoping that if you're listening, this is what you're looking for, right? You're looking for the business case. How can I use this for my business, right? I guess if you're selling items, this would make sense to you. Data controls. Again, improve the model for everyone is on remote browser data, on shared links. So all of this is about how much information you want to give OpenAI when you're doing this work. I know I think it's in security, it's in data controls. So if you want to put in a little bit more personalized data, this is a way to not let that data go into OpenAI. On a side note here, let me just interrupt what I'm doing for a second because I want you to understand something. As a software engineer who's worked on over 100-something products, over 70, 80 companies roughly, there's this idea that if I say do not use my data for your research, that the companies are just, that's what they want. We're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and not use their data or their information that they input in order to train or teach or use for referencing or whatever the case may be. The reality is that the information is already in the database. It's already accessible by the models. It's already accessible by the systems. It's going to be used. That's the hard fact truth. I've never in the tech world done work for a company. Even my company, Grata Software, the work that we do for other companies, there's never a delete option or remove option. There's always a flag, and that flag to you seems like your information is not available. You can't see it on the internet. It doesn't exist. But the reality is it's flagged as deleted, not necessarily hard deleted off the database. So the information is still in the data models. So when someone exports a data model and writes a query to export the data model, the information is still there. So turning this on or off, it's up to you. I don't care. I leave it on because I just don't care. I'm not going to run my company's personal information through ChatGPT. I'm not going to run my client's personal information through ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs that I go over the next few days. All of that stuff is always going to be accessible. That's why it's just might as well not do it. If you really want to protect your data, then download Olama or one of the other open source models that are basically pre-baked, and then you can fine-tune them to your data living on your server separate from any third party. And if you want to learn more about that, you want to understand more about that, all you got to do is put down in the comments, just say, hey, want to learn more or learn more because that's what we do at Grata Software. We build these customized solutions for companies, and that's usually the reason why, because these companies want to keep their proprietary data proprietary. All right, you have security options here. So this is basically just your two-factor authentication. So if you ever notice when you log in, it goes to your phone with a PIN code, all that kind of stuff. That's two-factor authentication. This is for that. Parental controls, I don't have family members on my account, so I don't have to worry about that. And then the account is just your account itself. Now, let's go to the top of the main screen because I just want to show what the main screen is. So at the very top, you see where it says ChatGPT, and it usually has a model after it. So mine is set to 5.2 thinking. Now, you don't have to use 5.2 thinking. You can use any one of the other models. You can use a legacy model and go to 5.1 instant, 5.1 thinking, GPT 4.0. Which you'll see there, it says leaving on February 13th. Usually, whatever model I use, I always use thinking because I want it to think. I want it to reason. It's not really thinking, it's reasoning. It's taking an input, it's taking an information, reasoning, and whether that information is correct, and then it continues to re-challenge itself to get you the right results. Instant is you get immediate answers. I don't like using instant. I actually used it for a chat the other day, and it's like the lazy AI chatbot. It just gives you pre-baked information just to give you background of how the model works and everything. So most of these models are pre-baked with training data, and they usually stop at a certain date. Depending on which model is, they stop, whether they stop in 2024, in January 2025, or some of them are later on in 2025. Based on the model, it's going to tell you. And I'll do that. I'll even do an example. And I'll ask this one, 5.2 thinking, I'll ask it, when was the last time it was trained? What's the last training data date? And that's important because if you've watched my previous episodes on how LLM works, there's a model that it's trained on, right? That the neural network, there's a neural network that goes through the model and then essentially comes out with an output. However, there's a thing called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Retrieval Augmented Generation allows you to go grab information that doesn't exist in the current data model. So if, let's say you say, hey, last week something happened on the news and I want you to give me more information about it. Well, the AI is going to know that the last training date is probably 2024 or early 2025. So it's not going to have last week's information. So what it's going to do is going to use the RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's going to go scour the internet for the information. It's going to pull that information in. It's going to clump that text into your request, and then it's going to pass it through the neural network and then have it regurgitate out whatever the response is going to be, now including that new data. That's how that works. And I kind of have a whole storyline, everything. If you check out the bonus podcast episode that I released last, that bonus explains it in a podcast-like tone. It kind of explains all of that using the storyline that I gave it. I created this story, someone getting a flat tire, meeting an old friend who happened to be the roadside assistance person, and then going to a networking party, and then how the gossip took the story and massaged it into something a little bit different, but still with the same context of the original, and how all of that turned into an output that was different, but yet was still in the same context and about the same situation. And I fed it into Notebook LM and had Notebook LM massage it into a very understandable podcast episode that talks about how LLMs work in that vein. So that way it's easier to understand than me explaining the technical. Okay, so back to here. So again, you can choose what model you want. I have the 5.2 thinking. And then in the middle, you have your chat. It says, what's on your mind today? That's what it says. And then it has the chat box. You can start typing. To the left of that box, you have a plus sign. It says add files and more. So when we talk about LLMs in general, what we always want to do is we want to put a lot of context. We talked about in a previous episode, MCPs and RAG, going out and retrieving tools and information. However, you can combine everything that you need for the chatbot to come out with a very consistent response. You can feed it as much information, as much data as possible that it can take. There is a thing called a context window. That context window is only so large. And when you hear the word context or the phrase context window, they're talking about how much you could type, how many words you could type into the system, into context. However, if you use files, photos, if you use any of these other things, right, what that does is that puts it part of the RAG system. It basically allows it to retrieve that information separately so that it doesn't eat up all of your tokens when it comes to context. And the reality is context is where it's at. Because the way the LLMs synthesize a bunch of words, run it through the neural network, and then return those words back in a different form. The way it does that, the more context you have, the better it calculates the relationships between the words that matter for what you're looking for. So that's why it's super important to have enough context. So in here, if you add a photo or files, if you add something from Google Drive, these are files and stuff that it can use in order to be able to synthesize into the neural network to be able to get the best results. Now in the drop down, you also have create image. So you can create images. Instead of you typing create an image, you can just click on that and they'll know that you're trying to create an image. Deep research is where it goes not only through the RAG system, but it also does a deeper dive into the internet to find other information. Shopping research, I haven't used that. Agent mode, I haven't used that, and there's a reason for that because I use agents using a whole nother tool. I don't use ChatGPT's agent yet. I will one day play with it and try to figure it out. The issue I have with agents that come from these types of systems is that they require access to your system, your hardware, your computer. And the thing is, you never want to give software access to your computer that it doesn't, like it's not a specific software that only handles a certain area of your computer. Once you give it access to your computer, it could have access to very sensitive data on your computer. And that's why I haven't played with it yet, because I'm not willing to risk it capturing any files or anything, because this is the computer I use to run my business, and I do have my clients' information on here. So I definitely don't want to do that. And so if you have a system like that you're using, please be very careful. Don't just start saying, just agent mode, go ahead and access my terminal and go ahead and access my bank account. Am I this? Yeah, because then you're gonna lose a lot of stuff. And maybe not lose it, but you're gonna expose it. And then a hacker is gonna take that and run with it. More, so you can add other sources here. So on the screen, for those that are listening, is after the agent mode on the drop down, when you're adding photos and files, there's also an option to add other sources. You can add other projects, other apps, things that people have created within ChatGPT. That's a little bit more advanced, so we're not going to go through that because obviously there's a Canva on there. And trust me, I've used it before and it's just not that well anyways. These are just apps that people have created, and some of them may work, some of them may not. But again, I'm going to show you how I use it in order to run my business. All right. Now, next to the plus sign, you have a thing that says thinking. So because I'm in the thinking model, it automatically defaults to thinking. Now, the thinking effort could be standard and it could be extended. Now, extended just means it's going to take a lot longer to do the research. It's going to dig a little bit deeper. I love Gemini, and we'll talk about Gemini one of these days, but Gemini actually visually shows you all the resources, all the sources it's going out to find information. So when you select something like that, like a deep thinking, you'll see visually what deep thinking is. It's literally scouring the internet for every piece of information and aggregating it all for the final product. And that's kind of what the extended thinking is here. Then to the right, you'll see it says dictate. You can just talk to your bot, which, we'll actually play with that. I'll play with that in a second. And then to the right of that, you have use voice. Now, I'll warn you, I experienced this just yesterday. I was driving in my car, heading home, and I wanted to just brainstorm something. So I turned on the chat, the use voice. And as I was talking, I asked it the pertinent questions I always ask, like, what's your last training date, like model date? It gave me a date of like 2024. And then I said, okay, I need to create a diagram for something. And I asked it, what is the best large language model to create a diagram for this specific thing I'm looking for? And it kept telling me that GPT 4.0, which is about 3 or 4 versions back, was the best option. Now, mind you, that's 3 or 4 versions back. We're talking months back. Lo and behold, not to get too technical, I finally realized that the chat feature has been frozen in time. If you use the chat or the voice, the feature has been frozen in time in the 4.0 days. Even though the underlying technology still accesses the latest model, it will be speaking and referencing things that are old. So it's confusing, and I would not recommend it. At least not for now. Grok kills that, by the way, and we'll get into Grok as well on a different day. Now, I'm going to tell you about the left sidebar, and I think we should be good after the left sidebar. Yeah. Well, I have a couple of other things. So the left sidebar, obviously on the top, you have the ability to open and close the pane. It says close sidebar. So I can close the pane, so I can get more space, and I can slide back over the logo of ChatGPT, and it'll let me expand it. New chat is exactly what it is. It's new chat. Search chats. If you're like me and you use this religiously and you have a lot of chats over time, this is where you can quickly search and find the chats that you're looking for. If I click on the screen, you'll see I have yesterday, previous 7 days. These are searches I've done recently, but you could search for specific chats that you've had in the past. Images, same thing. If I click on images, I'll look at all these different images that have already been created through my ChatGPT, and I could search for those images. Apps is any type of apps that are on the platform. I could search for that. And then codex. Codex is you've probably heard it. If you're listening and watching, if you're following AI in general, you've heard Claude Code, which is the vibe coding engine under Anthropic, Claude Code. The ChatGPT has their own called the codex. So it's a very same thing. It's a development environment built on ChatGPT or OpenAI's models, and allows you to write code and build apps and launch apps quickly. And I have things to say about that, but I'm not going to say anything. Not now. We're going to hold on for that one. All right, and this is GPTs. Now I'm going to pop this down. If you see on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of GPTs. These are all custom GPTs that I use or I've built. Now there's an option here to explore GPTs, and if you click on that, it'll allow you to search a bunch of GPTs. But I like to build customized GPTs based on what I need. If I'm doing something over and over and over again, and I feel like I'm wasting a lot of time like rewriting the prompts, I'll just go ahead and build a custom GPT so that all I have to do is give it the information or like the one or two pieces of pertinent information, and it'll automatically build the rest of it out. And I don't have to worry about rebuilding that. Now, the funny thing is that's a custom GPT. Custom GPTs you could share with people, okay? So for instance, I could build a custom GPT. I can make it part of a tooling system that I sell or that I use for like a free offer for a client, and they could access it through a link directly to that GPT. However, the same thing that I do for custom GPTs, I could do on projects. This is internal. So for instance, I have a project here. It's called LinkedIn Engagement. So I created a project where I can populate and put in as much information as I need in order for it to understand LinkedIn, let's say. And then I can go back to it, and instead of instantiating a chat individually all by itself where you have to train it information, I basically just go to that project where it's already been trained on LinkedIn engagement, and then I can actually tell it, this is the topic I want to talk about, create me a LinkedIn post based on that engagement. And I can go even further than that, but I just want to give you a taste of what that is, and then I'll actually go through one with you so you can see how it works. And so then in your chats, and this is your list of chats over here on the left hand side, and that's basically that part of the interface. Now the last two pieces of the interface I want to show, and let me get back to the main screen. So in the top right hand corner it says start a group chat. This is a new feature that they just added recently that allows you to create a group chat of a GPT that you're working on. So let's say I'm doing research and I'm using this to do research. I can create a group chat where multiple people can see the research that I'm doing, and then they can take over. I can basically walk away and they can take over the research and continue on. So this is great for group projects. And to the right of that is turn on temporary chat. If you're doing anything that's just temporary, that you don't want to keep, you don't want it to be stored here, you don't want anyone to see it, or you don't want it to remember it, then you can just turn on temporary chat, and it'll allow you to do everything at that moment. And then once you're done, none of that memory gets saved, none of that memory gets included in anything you do after that, and it basically just goes away. So you won't even be able to go back and see the conversation later. It basically just goes away. And that's how that works. All right, so we've covered the basic interface of ChatGPT. Now, why would we use ChatGPT today? What are we using it for? The thing is, when I first started playing with ChatGPT, it was in 2022. It just launched. I remember the day it launched. I had been using another tool, and that tool was using an API that used GPT technology. Was it OpenAI? I don't know. But this company was called Jasper. Originally it was called Jarvis, but Marvel threatened to sue them because they used Jarvis, the name Jarvis, which is a Marvel, the computer in Marvel, the AI in Marvel, Marvel movies. And what they did is they basically forced the company to change the name to Jasper. Well, that product was doing everything that we use all of these large language models to do today. I was able to create blog posts. I was able to be able to create social media posts off of information that I provided it. So I did a little bit deep research. Obviously, being in the industry and building software, I was very interested in how this company was able to build such a robust model or such a robust system that allowed me to do all of this research and do all of these posts and everything, all using artificial intelligence. And I found out that they were using a GPT technology already. Now, at the time, my company, we were already building natural language processing technologies for certain customers. Everything from customer service-based systems. Alexa is actually one of the first natural language processing models. And then also, because we were doing Alexa skills, by the way. And then we also built a solution for a client using a product called TextTrack, which was natural language processor system. So we were already working in this realm. However, when ChatGPT came out in 2022, the push was you can use this to do code, you could do this to do project management, you could do all these things. So immediately I ran from my office to the other side of the office because we were in a big office complex, and my office was on one side, a single office because I'm the owner of the company, and then my team was in another office as what they call a team space. I run over to the team space and I go, guys, I said, OpenAI just released this thing called ChatGPT. Everybody needs to get on it. Let's figure out how we can use this and leverage it for our business. And immediately the team jumped on it. And I jumped on it, and we were doing some crazy stuff with it. A lot of the stuff today that people are doing on a day-to-day basis that was crazy back then. It was only 2-3 years ago. But it was the fact that it was brand new. It was something that allowed you to insert information or insert an idea, and it would spit out all of this stuff because it had such a large learning data set. Because that's the key part. Because one of the biggest, hardest parts when you're running a business, the hardest part is to understand what is really going on out there. Like, we used to have to go to a library. We used to have to go and use reference databases, these very expensive databases that only the libraries could have because they could afford it, or the college libraries could have because they could afford it. And we'd have to go in there, and if we wanted to research anything, we would have to go to the library. We'd have to look at microfilm. I mean, look that up. Microfilm, microfiche. We'd have to go through all of that just to find any information that we needed in order to help us understand, to do like a feasibility of whether our business idea is going to work, whether there's a market for what we're trying to sell, like all those kind of things. But now we were able to type into this chat, and we were able to get more target markets, total market reports of what's going on in the industry, like all those things that we used to have to go to these libraries or have to pay for these, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year databases. They're now accessible through this chatbot. That was the thing that blew it up. That's the thing that made us all go, wow, we've entered a whole different place, because this used to take a while to get this information, and now we can get it faster. So that's what we normally use ChatGPT for. I'm going to show you real quick. I love this tool. So first of all, I'm going to show you a custom GPT and basically how I put it together in such a short, I don't want to take up too much time because this is more of a deep learning thing. But I want you to understand like what we could do here. So if I go to my GPTs and I go explore GPTs, on the top right hand side, there's a thing called my GPTs. But to the right of that is create. I can create a GPT, a custom one. So I'm going to go to my GPT though, because I want you to see one of mine. So here it is, Grata Software Avatar Finder. Now I'm talking to business owners here. Right? I'm assuming the people listening to this podcast are business owners or entrepreneurs, people that are interested in AI and how they could use it in their everyday life. And so right here, so this is a custom chatbot that I built. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the chatbot. Yeah. So I'm going to go to that avatar finder and I'm going to click edit GPT because I want you to see what it took to make this thing. All right. So what you do is you go in here and you have a configuration piece. This is what I use because I already knew what I wanted to do when I built this chatbot. Most people who don't really know what they want to do, you could just chat in it. I want to create this tool. This is what I want to do. And then it'll work with you. It'll chat with you. It'll like step by step in order to build you what you want. And then you can test it and everything. But what I did is I went to the configuration and I said, this is going to be a Grata Software trademarked avatar finder. This is a custom bot that I created specifically for people who join my programs at Digital Strike and my Grata Software training, the AI training. It says, when the user types "let's get started," you are to begin an interactive step-by-step series of questions to determine a customer avatar that the user serves. Ask each question individually and wait for the user's full response for moving to the next question. Do not ask the next question until the current one is fully answered. Here are the questions to ask. What is the product or service that you offer? Write down your core offer. Has an example, right? Another question. What is the problem that you are solving? So on and so forth. And then I even give it more information on the prompt. Again, we're talking context. We talk about context. You need to provide a lot of context and detail because all of those are words that get put together that when it throws it into the neural network, it's finding the probability of all these words relating to other words and pulling it all together into one big response. It's a mathematical equation. There's no actual thinking. There's no magic beyond math. You just have to feed it the right amount of information for it to understand what to do. Conversation starter, let's get started. Now, here it says knowledge base. This is where you plug in the knowledge base, where it says knowledge. Now, you'll see here it says customer avatar deep dive. This is the secret sauce, ladies and gentlemen. This is the secret sauce that you need to have. This is where your expertise matters. Because if you know what you're looking for in an avatar, you know what that even means. You build out your secret sauce. You put it in a PDF file, a text file, whatever file. You feed the file, you upload the file to the knowledge base. And then now that becomes part of the RAG, right? The retrieval augmented generation. That becomes part of the data, the tools that it needs in order to be able to find the right information to finish the job. If I open this up and I show this to you, I'm giving you my intellectual property. I'm giving you all the years of experience I know how to do this, right? And basically handing it over to you, right? So this is the stuff that you hold near and dear, that you know it's your expertise. You plop it in there, okay? Because what it's going to do is going to take all these instructions, and one of the things it's going to do is going to reference that file first, and that's what you want. Recommended model. It says no recommended model. Users. Now, this is funny. This has changed recently because I always say use the thinking model. So I had this forced into the 5.1 thinking model, but now that 5.2 thinking is out, it put it into users will select the model, which is fine. Doesn't bother me a bit. And then capabilities. We want to do web search. Canvas is the ability to create documents and stuff like that. So we want that on. And then image generation. In case someone asks for an image, it has that capability. And then basically when you're done here and you select update, or it's going to be, create or something when you do it the first time, when it gets done, it'll give you a public link. And that public link, this share link, is the link that you will use. So it says so you'll have this option. Anyone can, with the link can see this, right? And then you could copy that link. And then now that link you can populate into your, if you have a link tree or if you have any type of marketing page where you can mask the full link into a shorter link or maybe a word or phrase, right? That people could click on and they can go to your bot. Okay, that's one way. That's one thing you can do using ChatGPT that makes it dynamic. And by the way, every LLM has their own version of this. The thing is, ChatGPT allows you to make custom GPTs that have their own custom links. And if you see this, I have one in here where it's an actual client of mine where I created a donor focus group, and I did one for a client of mine just to test it, and it worked flawlessly. So there's that. So there's GPTs. You can create custom GPTs. Now, how easy is that? Now, imagine I did it configuring it manually. You could just use the chat and build your own. Okay. Projects. I'll go back to the projects. Oh, this is cool. Travel itinerary. There it is. So something super simple. So I had a business trip to Boise. I was limited on budget. I couldn't spend a certain amount of money. I had to figure out how can I get there and come back on a specific budget. So what I did is I created a project. In the project settings, I said travel to Boise. I gave it a set of instructions, and I said specifically where I'm traveling from, where I'm traveling to. And then I gave it the PDF file of my actual itinerary from Delta Airlines, because I like to fly Delta all the time. The hotel I'm staying at, all that information. Now, that's the context of the travel. Then I just created a chat and I said, okay, I need a budget travel plan based on the amount of money that I need to budget within, all this kind of information. It says, what is my best way to travel as far as how much money can I spend on food, how much money I can spend on drink, where can I go? Can I do a rental car? All those kind of things. And it basically responded back with a full travel itinerary with specific requirements. It says, go to your hotel, drop your things off, go to the grocery store across the street, and go buy groceries. And that should last you the 3-4 days you're supposed to be on this business trip. And therefore, I think the total budget was like $200 after hotel and flight. Perfect. All right. Stupid things like that. Think about how that could be used in your business. What could you use it for a project for? Again, this is a project. So this is something that you're going to request over and over again. Like you're going to do this over and over again. The difference is this is not shareable. This is internal, right? The custom GPT, you could share it. Project, internal. All right. And then the other thing that you could do on here, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm going to create a new chat And what I love, and this is something that's going to blow your mind, everybody. This is going to blow your mind. Some people think, like, you've probably read and seen all of these prompting guides, right? What if I told you that the best way to prompt an AI is to ask the AI what the prompt should be? And you'll be surprised. Not many people know that. So let's look at this. Let's say in my business I have, perfect example. I have 2 pictures, and I want to take those 2 pictures and I want to apply them to one photo. So I'm just gonna, for fun, I'm just gonna do this, and hopefully I don't expose anything major. But I'm gonna go ahead and add a photo, and I'm gonna go ahead and add another photo. And these 2 girls standing at "We are open for brunch, lunch, and dinner." Okay, cool. So I'm gonna say So first things first, when I'm prompting, you always want to tell it who it is. And you want to be very detailed and contextual. So in this regard, I'm going to say, you are a world-class photographer and graphic designer. Now, why would I say that? Why would I even say the word world-class? The reason why I would say that is because I want it to make sure that it brings in context of world-class photography and graphic design. Hopefully that when it does its research and its thinking, quote unquote thinking, it goes out and it finds words that tie together and images and phrases that tie together to those words. Okay? Turn graphic designer, and you are responsible for an ad campaign for entrepreneurs, and you are to use the photos provided to combine the first photo. You don't have to give it name. So the first photo of, combine the first photo with the second photo where it looks like the subject in the first photo is greeting the 2 ladies in the second photo. Okay. However, I need you to create the prompt to ensure that the 2 photos are high quality, photorealistic, and look like the subject from the first photo is truly in the scene in the second photo. Okay. Write the prompt that we will copy and paste into the image creation chat. All right. So I kicked that sucker off. Now this is let's see what it does. Okay. So it tells you copy and paste this into your image creation chat, attach both images as reference. All right. I've already given the images as reference, but I want to do that again. I want to make sure I give those images as reference. And so the thing is, right, I don't know exactly what the AI's expectations are. I don't. So I could have made that first part just the prompt and tried it out. But I always like to get the most accurate response. And in order to get the most accurate response, I always prompt the AI what it wants as the prompt by telling it to write the prompt itself. I give it all the details and say, just write the prompt yourself, and then I will just copy and paste that. Okay? Now you'll see it thought even further. It even has a negative prompt, avoid cartoons, illustration, all these things that I wouldn't have thought of because I wasn't thinking that far, right? I'm not the AI, right? It's even giving wardrobe guidance, everything. All right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a whole new chat, but I'm going to copy this first. So I'm going to copy this. And if you're listening, I'm basically just copying the response of the prompt that I created. I'm going to create a brand new chat. Okay. I'm going to paste in there. And at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload those photos again. So I'm going to go back to the photo of me, which hopefully I'll find it again. Right here, take a headshot. Yep, there I am. And mind you, you got to do it in the same order because I told it to basically look at those 2 photos. So you got to do the same order. First photo's got to be me again. Second photo has got to be the 2 girls. Right, so now I got that in there. Got those prompts. Let me remove the words copy and paste because we don't want that in there. Okay, and I don't mind leaving the word prompt because leaving the word prompt just notifies it that it's a prompt. And I'm going to switch this to create an image. All right, so it knows we're creating an image. All right, and boom, I'll hit it. And then let's see what happens. Now I'm doing this live, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're listening to this podcast, you're watching me do it live I didn't edit this part. I'm not editing this part. I'm literally doing it live, and we're going to see exactly what the response looks like. And we're going to see if it's either going to do really well or if it's going to crash and burn. And from the history of using ChatGPT to do images, it very rarely crashes and burns when I'm doing images, especially with this much detail and this much instruction. But you never know. The other thing is I'm not very photogenic. A lot of times what the AI does, it messes with my face and tries to make me look more attractive than I really am. And so it kind of messes with like what I really look like. And sometimes it's like it doesn't even look like me when it's done. So we'll see if that happens. So I love this part. It's because, by the way, if you're listening, it's like pulsating with what the image looks like it's going to be. Oh, crap. Look at that. Oh, my gosh. That is my face. It did a great job with my face. And it kept my size. Look at that. Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a photo. That is what we asked for. Okay, do I have 6 hands? No. It's got my body size. It looks basically what I would look like. It still makes me look a little bit more handsome than I really am in person. I'll take it. There you go. So again, if I'm creating an ad, right, and I need an image for my ad, for my Facebook ad or whatever, this is how you would do one. I hope I've done a good job at covering what you can do with ChatGPT. If you're listening to this, I beg you to go and watch the video version because you're going to get a lot more. You're going to be able to visualize and see exactly what happened, what we just did here. And you'll and I think you'll get a lot more kick out of ChatGPT, especially if you're new and you've never used it that much before, or if you're just trying to figure it out. Now, there's so much more to ChatGPT. I just gave you a taste. There's just so many things we could do for your business. In fact, that's why in my Digital Strike program, we have a whole program on how to go find clients. We built that custom avatar finder that I showed you. That is part of that program that we have. We show you how you can target a specific avatar or create your avatar based on your buyer's awareness levels, and then how to actually create an offer, what we call a Godfather offer, which is an offer they can't refuse in your product line. Whether you have a product line, you have a service line, how we can create a Godfather offer to those clients, those specific clients, and then how do you message them? How do you speak in their voice and get them to basically, book a call, purchase your product? Things like that. And so we show you how to do all that in our program. It's basically a 30 to 60 day where we walk you through how to do the steps, and then we actually apply those to your business and try to get you clients early, quickly, as fast as possible. Again, this whole podcast is sponsored by Grata Software and also sponsored by Digital Strike, both of my companies, because we definitely wanted to teach and show people how to use artificial intelligence and automation. We didn't even cover automation, obviously, because this week we're going over each of the chatbots, and how you could use those AI, the chatbots, for all these different things that you could do. So that's it for this episode. If you obviously like, follow, subscribe, thanks for being here, and see you guys in the next one.